Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Angela Henley Mitchell. I am the Boston Public Schools Program Director for History and Social Studies, and I want to welcome you to this asynchronous session on an introduction to the DBQ platform, and this will be for both elementary and secondary. Today, I just want to go over our overarching objectives, and I'm sure that you've been participating in other professional development this week, so this is not unfamiliar. So these are our objectives for our time together: incorporate students' cultural knowledge and affirm students' racial and cultural identities. We'll be doing that work a little bit in this session. Establish educated care and culturally responsive learning environments, promote open communication between families and the district, and developing partnerships with parents and caregivers, discover student strengths and observing students' potential for learning, and where relevant, capitalizing on opportunities for student input and dialogue, and incorporating issues important to students and their families. These are our tenets that we're living by. We also have our 6 commitments to the Boston community: eliminate opportunity and achievement gaps, accelerate learning, amplify all voices, expand opportunity, cultivate trust, and activate partnership. So there are pillars that guide our work in the History and Social Studies classroom, and I just wanted to go over this before we hear from Chip Brady, who is Executive Director of the DBQ project. And these are things that guide our work. So as mentioned before, the cultural and linguistically sustaining practices utilizes the cultural knowledge of students, families, and communities to adapt practices, materials, and environments to engage, motivate, and facilitate deep learning. Anti-racist is one who expresses the idea that racial groups are equal. None needs developing and supported by policy that reduces racial inequity. Anti-racism results from a conscious decision to make frequent, consistent, equitable choices daily. These choices require ongoing self-awareness and self-reflection as we move through life. These principles guide our work as social studies teachers because we want to make sure that the environments we provide our students honor their voice, honor their background, their cultural background, their experiences, and that we're looking at materials that do uplift and do speak to their story and that are anti-racist as well in their what they present. Also that guides our work are these 7 forms of bias: invincibility, stereotyping, imbalance, selectivity, unreality, fragmentation, isolation, linguistic bias, and cosmetic bias. And I welcome us to start thinking in this lens of CLSP, anti-racism, and through the 7 forms of bias, and our presentation of the resources we provide students, looking at our texts, and also at the lessons that we present and how we present our information to our students and what we choose to present to our students. History and Social Studies instruction central question: how can we as history and social studies educators create rigorous learning environments which are culturally and linguistically responsive, utilize anti-racist materials and mindset, explore the narratives of those stories who have been marginalized, and provide opportunities for critical thinking and evidence-based writing? As we look as a department and how do we bring together this CLSP, anti-racism, and the 7 forms of bias together, we want to ensure that our students receive curriculum and course resources that diversify the narrative. So we're not going to the traditional, what we've always done before. How do we do things that we make sure that it's multicultural, it's diverse, present stories from multiple cultures, peoples, and provide racial and cultural equity in the presentation of history, utilizing students' existing schema, experiences, funds and knowledge, and perspectives to facilitate learning optimally, including an ethnic studies lens. So not just an ethnic studies course, but how do we utilize an ethnic studies lens into existing coursework, scope, and sequences, always cognizant of our own biases, schema, and opinions that impact the delivery, selection of resources, language used, and instruction of the historical record. So one thing that's going to be important as we move forward is looking at our own identity and how that impacts what we present in history and how we present it. That's really influential in what students receive, and how do we take that back to what the students' experiences are and their cultural identities, and how there might be a mismatch, but how do we bring that together so that we make sure that we have this robust curricula that speaks to the student, speaks to the community. I welcome you to listen to the video linked here. It's about a 12-minute video. It's a TED Talk by Dr. Melissa Crum, who talks about teacher identity and how that can impact instruction. So identity and how it shapes us as social studies and history educators. How does identity shape how we teach? So I welcome you to think about and reflect and ground yourself in these questions moving forward in professional development for history and social studies, and also what you present as a history and social studies teacher. Think about the following questions. Who am I? What factors make up my identity? How is my identity shaped by power and privilege? What topics do I find challenging to talk about in class? Why do I find these topics challenging? And how might my perspective be different from those of my students and colleagues? And identity, we're doing work with identity doesn't have to necessarily always be with the teacher, but also students should map out their identities, which is helpful in the beginning of the year to help build community. James Baldwin says the paradox of education is precisely this, that one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which he is being educated. The purpose of education, finally, is to create in a person the ability to look at the world for himself, to make his own decisions, to say to himself if this is black or this is white, to decide for himself whether there is a God in heaven or not, to ask questions of the universe and then learn to live with those questions is the way he achieves his own identity. So if we don't give students an opportunity to see themselves in the text, to see themselves in the materials we present, or to see themselves in the historical record that honor the experiences of ancestors, how can students really create this greater sense of identity for who they are and pride for where they come from? At this time, I'm going to turn the video over to Chip Brady, who's going to present an overview of using the Online DBQ resource.
Hello, my name is Chip Brady, and I'll be walking you through the DBQ Online platform today. If you have any questions after this, please email us at support@dbqproject.com. So Boston Public School teachers will be logging in through Clever, and once you log in and accept the terms of use, you will then end up at this page, which will be where you live in DBQ Online. This is called the dashboard. And I'm going to orient you to this. I'm going to talk a little bit about the DBQ project methodology, and then I'm going to give you about 15 minutes of tips of how to use the system effectively, and especially in remote learning situations. You can always stop this and replay it, and you can always, of course, get in touch with us for a live demo for your department or for your teachers that you're working with. Okay, so let's begin. When you log into DBQ Online, you'll see this dashboard. You can always get back to the dashboard by clicking up here, Dashboard, or clicking up here, this red button. The most important tiles on this dashboard are the top three. There's on the left-hand side, there's the library, which I'll show you in a minute. There's classes and assignments, which is where you go to create your classes and create assignments and then get them to students. And then there's this professional development video tile, which if you have not used the DBQ project in print or online before, I would suggest starting here. And I think I will actually do that, and I'm going to click on this tile to kind of show you what's in the videos, but also to overview what I call our DBQ project 6-step method. So what we have here in these videos is an orientation video, a DBQ online overview, which you're basically getting here. And then we have 6-step kind of core videos that detail, and there are actually 7 because there's two parts to one step, our pedagogy. Starting with the hook exercise, I'll kind of walk through each of these, but these videos, if you want to get a more in-depth treatment, are about 5 minutes in length, and you might want to watch them after this screencast. The hook exercise for us is to build engagement and to build initiative as we get into the difficult evidence-based writing and reading. And this video describes how we get kids often in pairs or working together or talking things out. And if they're in remote learning settings, we give some suggestions about that as well. we feel that an engaged student is more likely to get to step 2 and be willing to read the background essay, which is often a one-pager. This is to build contextual background. So many of our students struggle with background knowledge that we need to set the table for them before we throw documents in front of them. So the background essay is critical. We often do multiple reads. The third step is often one that's skipped by teachers and students, actually, because it seems pretty self-explanatory. But if you don't do it well, kids can get lost. That we stop students and we have them basically deconstruct the question and rewrite it in their own words and do something we call pre-bucketing, which is basically predicting the generic kind of answers to the question. So something like, what caused World War I? We would like the buckets to represent kind of visual graphic organizers or body paragraphs. And before they see the documents, all we want our students to have cause 1, cause 2, cause 3, cause 4, or something like that. So they know they're looking for causes as they dive into the documents. Step 4 is the heart of the exercise, document analysis. And in our work, we often have 4 or 5 or 6 documents to kind of handle, to kind of bring to bear evidence on the DBQ question or document-based question that we call it, that they're going to answer. We will do a lot about document analysis in this particular screencast. But once students have ingested and deconstructed and looked at the documents and read them, there might be just even one, we have them do something called final bucketing, which is organizing the documents into clusters of evidence so that they can have powerful argumentative structures. So we will get into that as we look at the units of study, but this is a core teaching approach that we use for students who need that type of support. Not everybody does. Once they do analyze the documents and organize them into sort of an attack plan and an argument to make some claims, we really believe in thrashing it out, which is really just a dialogue-based activity where you get the students engaged as a full class, or on a remote set. In a remote setting, you might do something along the lines of a chat-based thing or breakout rooms if you have the ability to do that. But we want kids to talk out their arguments using the evidence before they go into the writing process. And our final step is actually the writing, where we have a ton of supports in our writing outlines, but this whole process of building hook, background, pre-bucketing, doc analysis, bucketing, and finally thrash out really is building towards this final written piece, which is our touchstone, often multi-paragraph, but especially during remote learning and for younger kids, a one-paragraph solid write is fantastic. Okay, just a little note on the videos. You notice that there are some larger tiles here. These are the overview videos, but then next to each of the more complicated steps, we have teaching tips. These are 2-minute teaching tips about a slice of instruction you might bring to bear at this particular point. So there's sort of an unlimited amount of professional development that you can do on your own by just using the PD videos. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the dashboard and I'm going to look at these tiles again, and I want to introduce you to our library. So for the Boston Public Schools, you have here are a series of, we call them binders because they originally come from the print binders, and many of you have held them before. And there are several things to note here. Your school will be assigned particular binders based on the grade levels that you teach. So some of you, especially the high schools, will have all of these binders. Many of you will just have 2 or 3 of the binders, especially the elementary schools will have the elementary binders right here, which are the lavender or purple. And I'm going to walk you through a couple of these, okay? Now, a couple of things to note. The first 2 binders, if you have the black and green ones, we call them the DBQs or mother Qs. They're basically longer. If you click on one like this and you look at the number of documents, say, in a mother queue, I guess you could say, I'll kind of go to a page which shows you the number. There are often 14 or 15 documents here. And that is often used in high school, these DBQs, and we love them. But I wouldn't recommend giving this to your 4th or 5th or 6th or even some middle schoolers. On the other hand, most of our units are called mini queues, and the mini queues are different in 2 ways. If you click on one of these and you preview it, you can see that at the bottom here you have 4 documents. And there's often 4, 5, or 6 documents in a mini queue. But even more importantly, as you'll find out, there's a lot of scaffolding all throughout the process, which we'll talk about. And if you go back to the library, when you go down to, say, the elementary queues, I'll kind of showcase these, you'll see that there are actually 3 versions. The other ones will have 2 versions, but I want to go through the versions because in the mini queues and the elementary queues, there's an EV, which stands for enhanced version, which is heavily scaffolded and all the documents. There's a CV, which stands for clean version, which is basically all the documents, same question, but no scaffolding. And then in the elementary Qs only, very important, you click on here and if you're going to assign the MB, that stands for micro Q, and that's usually a one document, sometimes two document effort, which leads to one paragraph. These other ones often lead to multi-paragraphs with maybe a formal introduction. But for the elementary Qs, we build in a micro Q experience. So if you preview this one and you're looking at the Iroquois, and what does the Longhouse teach us about the Iroquois? You come down here and you look at one document, and that's all the students are going to be expected to handle. Now you can actually micro Q any DBQ because you can customize any one of these things in any one of our binders just to one document, so we can talk about that. But in the elementary Q, we set you up for success here, and that might even be the way I start with most of my students, especially given remote learning and the time you have with the students. Okay? So that's basically a quick overview of what's in the libraries. Now let me take you through and take you through a quick unit of study. And I'll in fact use the elementary Qs since I think it applies to everything, but it'll give us a little way to show you our maximum scaffolding. So let's take the Iroquois one that I looked at, and let's look through this unit in a full force. We'll look at the enhanced version, which has all the scaffolding. So if you click on that in our online system, and of course I just want to remind you that your students have access to all of this too. Once you assign it, they have the exact same functionality in terms of the markup features, which we'll talk about. But our units of study are best seen if you kind of look at the drop-down menu here where this says cover. That means you're on the cover page. If I clicked on here, you would go to the hook exercise, etc. But what you can actually look at the structure of our units. There's the hook, the background essay questions, understanding the question pre-bucketing, the documents themselves, and in this case there's 3, and then the bucketing and the student essay, the writing and student essay. So if you look at this, I'm going to fly through it. The hook exercise for Iroquois is really just analyzing 2 visuals of housing, because we're talking about the Longhouse for the Iroquois. So we're looking at different versions of housing and what we can maybe learn about a culture and society just by looking at that. And this, again, as there's some discussion questions here that you might run as a class, or if you're actually in school, they could do this in pairs and you can process it. The next step is the background essay, and this is the longest read that you have in this mini Q. It's often 1 page, and this one happens to be about 2/3 of a page, and it's written at the various grade level bands that we have. Second, we have document analysis questions to go along with it. And then when you hit the documents themselves, or actually this is step 3, understand the question pre-bucketing. This is where we have the kids kind of predict the categories of analysis and rewrite the question. And in the online version, you notice that there's a teacher side. If you click on that as a teacher, you'll see some possible suggestions on how kids could answer the question. So all we're looking for are what lessons can we learn from looking at the Longhouse. We just want them to have lesson 1, 2, 3. They don't know what those are, but now they know they're looking for 3, maybe 3 lessons. Plus they've rewritten the question to show they understand that. As you move into the documents themselves, you have a document like this. There's always a source line. In the elementary Qs, there's often a title, not in the mini Qs and mother Qs. And then we have document analysis questions below. Now, this is really important. What kids can do in the online feature is they can answer their questions right in here. They don't have to kind of put a little sticky note or something like that there. Now, the other important thing is that if you happen to assign, this is the EV version, the enhanced, and one of the major scaffolds we have in here are these questions underneath the documents. But if you remove them, and you can do that actually in the EV, you go like hide, this is what you'd be assigning if you assign the clean version, just this. So you have to determine whether your students are ready for just attacking a text like this without document analysis support. And you are the decider because you know your students. But in this case, I've assigned the doc analysis questions because it's the EV. And you can see the documents are a mixture of visuals, of textual documents, etc. You might also note that sometimes we put in a couple of images like this to analyze as a package. We call that a document. Now, on the back end of this, we have the students coming back to the actual buckets. This is step 5. You go to the teacher side, and this is what we're looking for. They are able to put these documents in the buckets. Maybe they represent body paragraphs. And then they develop what we call a chicken foot or a thesis development stem, where they're now into writing and structuring your essay with a proper claim statement and 3 sub-reasons, which become their topic sentences. And once they get through that, and they're able to plan. They can go into their essay outline guide, and we have a lot of versions of that, which I'll show you a little bit later. And then we have a essay box where they can type in their essay and send it to the teacher. Okay, now that's going very fast. I just wanted to give you a flyover. I'm going to go back here and kind of coach you on and talk to you about how you could create an assignment in a class. So if you want to take a break here and push pause, that would be terrific. And I will too. And we'll get going in 1 second. So now if you are ready and have reviewed sort of the DBQs that you might want to teach, and if you're ready to assign them, what you would want to do is go into classes and assignments. And the first time you do this, you will have a blank page here. And I have a lot of classes that I've worked with over the last few weeks, so I have them loaded up here. But you would start your process by adding a class. And I would suggest possibly going, maybe giving it a label. So U.S. History, period 1, if you want to. And you could save that. And once you save that, this is important, it'll pop up and you'll see this page. And what you've effectively done is you've created a class code up here. And if you click on this view button, this is your unique class code for Boston Public Schools. And what you have to do is share that with your students, and they have to type that in to a particular page, which looks like this. I think I have it saved up. When they log into DBQ Online and Clever for the first time, they'll see this, actually. And they will type that class code right into here. Let's actually do that. We'll copy it, and we'll do it. Get rid of that. And we'll paste it in here, and you join the class. And once they do that, they'll be in your U.S. History Period 1 class. Now, you haven't created any assignments, so they won't see anything. This stays here just in case you want to add them to a different class as well, which is very rare, but we kept it here. But this is the key thing for students to look for, your actual label. Now, once you do that, it will appear on your roster. This will probably be just a numeric roster. I'm going to refresh my browser to show you what it looks like. So if I click on roster here, you can see that's my number that I signed up. When they come in, they'll come in with their actual names because they'll be in your system, okay? So what you want to do, the first thing you want to do is create a class and get all of your kids in the class and make sure they're on the roster. You can always remove them, but they won't come in if they're from some different school. They have to line up with where your school is, okay? So let's pretend you have that going. And what you want to do now is I'm going to teach you to build an assignment. But before we do that, I want to show you one more thing on this page. This secondary teacher tab might become very important to you, especially if you co-teach. And if you co-teach and you want to have a co-teacher in the class and being able to see student work and give feedback, you would just click on this and you would invite that instructor, give them full or limited access, type in their email, and they would be in the class. And they would be able to see exactly what you're seeing and do exactly what you're doing with the kids. So keep in mind the secondary instructor feature, okay? So now we're in our let's go to our U.S. History Period 1 class. And I'm going to create my first assignment. And this is where it gets really interesting for teachers who are really looking to support kids, because there's a lot of supports in here. I'm going to click Add an Assignment. Either one will work. And I'm going to actually go into maybe our U.S. History Volume 1. And I'm going to click on, say, Harriet Tubman and Greatest Achievement, since I like the reader on this. And I'm going to click, instead of Preview, I'm going to click Assign. And this is creating an assignment for this particular class. And here's where you get into the power of the system here. When you get to this page, we call this the additional supports page. You have several options for giving extra support. And the first thing I want to recommend to you is that maybe during remote learning, you always click this button called Customize, because there you can shrink the length of the assignment. You can maybe create an assignment with just a hook exercise, and let's say we want to do the background essay one day, but eliminate everything else, so the kids aren't overwhelmed as you get into this. And what you could do then, after they finish this, you can go and edit the assignment and maybe add 2 documents for the next day's work. And you can do that over and over again and just layer in the process. And maybe because remote learning, we don't know exactly how much time we have. You start with one document and you see how far you get, and you go to the next one, etc. And the students aren't either working ahead or overwhelmed. So for right now, I'm going to assign most of the documents just so you can get a sense of what a flow would look like. And So that's my first big decision. Now, if you assigned it in an entire unit mode, they would get all these documents and you could not modify them. So that's the key. That's why I'm saying maybe start with customize. The next decision you have to make is whether you want to enable the English and Spanish toggle. So for 11 of our binders, we have a Spanish version that you could assign it in. I'm going to show you more about that in a minute. But for this, I'm going to click yes, just so you can see it in process. I'm also going to include the audio read aloud, which I didn't mention before, but all of our textual documents, background essays, we've hired voice actors to kind of read these out loud and bring them to life, which we're really excited about. And for many people, it's the most powerful tool in the whole system. And just for looking at kids who really need support, I'm going to include this guided essay, where if you read this description, it's a sentence starter outline. So kids really are almost filling in. It's kind of a closed writing activity to really build confidence in the writing structures. I'm going to click on yes for that. I'm not going to do the essay builder yet, but I am going to actually assign the sample essays, which actually have our low, a medium, and higher essay, where we could use to kind of look at types of writing we're having kids struggle, strive for. And we can show you how to do that also. So if you move in, then we also have attached rubrics and scoring guides, which I'm not going to go into right now, but there are 4 different types of rubrics that you could assign to these, which you can use to pass back your feedback. That might be a more advanced screencast down the road, but I want to make sure you take a look at these rubrics to see if they're interesting to you and will be useful. And then you can always click, if you click on yes to this one, which just specifies students who receive the assignment, you would see a list of all of your students. You can click on each kid who needs this particular support and create a particular supported assignment for these guys. So theoretically, you could differentiate this multiple ways for a single class, and the students wouldn't even know what was going on if they weren't sitting next to each other. A lot of teachers might add, say, I'm going to assign the hardest document to a few kids as a stretch activity, or I'm going to assign the audio for particular students, or maybe just only if you need the guided essay, et cetera. So that's your decision. And as you get used to the system, you'll be doing more and more differentiation. And at this point, you can label this. Let's just say I want to put guided essay version on here, give it its particular name, then you could save it and assign it, okay? So if you want to save it, it'll save it into your account as a draft and won't be in the student's account. If you want to save it and assign it, it'll actually be assigned. So I'm going to save it just so we can show you how to actually do this. And when you save it, the most important thing happens here in terms of remote learning that we have in the whole system. It pops it up, and this happens with save and assign as well, and it asks you this question. Would you like to add teacher instructions, annotations, and notes before saving? And if you click add markups, we call this the markup feature, and you're thrown into the actual unit of study that the students see. So this is what the students see. And you have this tan button showing you that you're in the teacher markup mode. And what you want to know here is that, and we haven't really gone through this, but we have all of these annotation tools, including a sticky note like this, where you can type in your teaching notes, or kids can type in their thinking because they have the same access. You can change the color. You can change the size of the font. You can actually change the size of the sticky note by grabbing this little blue box on the bottom right. If you don't like what you have here, you can always pick the trash can and delete it. But let me run through these while we're looking at it, run through this very quickly and then talk. Remember, we're in the teacher markup mode, so the kids will be able to see everything here. You have a freehand drawing tool where kids can actually draw, and not just draw, but they often highlight. This is the transparency level, so let's just go to light transparency, but very thick. And you can see how a student could use this to highlight things. You have a sticky note, which I already demonstrated. You have a blank sticky note, which basically is just text if you type it in here, right? And you leave it, and you leave that, it stays on the page like this. You have an oval where you can ask kids to do close analysis of documents and say, let's circle 3 details in this about Harriet. You have a bucket tool, which will become more understandable later, but you can type into this bucket tool with basically structured ideas about evidence clustering. A nice thing you could do here is with this box is you can actually circle key ideas, sources, etc. Not circle, but kind of box them up. And a lot of teachers use it that way. And of course, all of these, you have color options, which becomes very important. A line tool, an arrow tool, a clear or a thick. You can actually create what we call a box tool where you can make this almost, you can't see through it. You can cover up various things as a teacher and as a student. So there's a lot of functionality. And I do want to say that the first assignment that you do with your students might be a very short 1-page DBQ, maybe 2 pages from the text, maybe a cover page and a hook, where the kids are basically getting used to and playing with the annotation tools. I think for you as a teacher, you have to practice with them. They're very easy and very fluid, but you want to make sure that the students are doing it. Now remember, I'm doing 2 things at once here. We're actually in teacher markup mode. So what I've done here is I've actually put all these markups for kids to see. What I would probably be doing on a real assignment is giving 2 or 3 or 4 key instructions for them to do, because in remote learning situations, you have a limited time. You have to be incredibly explicit with your instructions. And you could type in step 1, analyze the question. What do you think greatest means? Step 2, what are 3 details in the picture? Step 4, or a task 4, 3, take a look at the overview. Is there anything interesting in there that we need to talk about? Step 5, play with the annotation tools, circle all the documents. You can literally give them things to do and give them directions here, okay? So just keep in mind that your first DBQ experience, probably with the markups, you're going to be incredibly explicit with your instructions all the way throughout. I'm going to go to the background essay page, maybe go to a document actually, and I want to show you a couple of things. We'll go to one that's not a map, although I love this document. If you actually go into, say, a textual document like this, you'll find that a couple of things here. And again, this is still markup mode, but I'm demonstrating the online tools as well. You can mark them up. But remember where I attached the Spanish toggle? There's this button now here that if you have students who need this language support, if you click on it, then the Spanish version pops up. Now you can also assign this, and I'll show you how to do this in a little bit. You also can assign this entire DBQ in Spanish with an English toggle. But we have this for 11 of our binders. And quite frankly, if you see this, in fact, let me just demonstrate where you find that. If you see this, are you in the units here? And if you go to Harriet Tubman, when you're assigning, this is how you know if you have it. There's an English version and a Spanish version for each binder that has the translation. If you click on this, everything's in Spanish, and this is where you're assigning it actually in Spanish proper. And if we were to do that for the Harriet Tubman, and we would put it in our U.S. History Period 1 class, and we assign it, we'll just assign the whole thing for now. We'll do the English toggle. And what you'll see here, when you come back to this, is the Spanish version of the Harriet Tubman. And if you click on it, it'll actually be in Spanish, and they could pop up the English toggle. So all of that is very possible in our system. We're hoping that's useful. We just put that into 11 binders, and the rest will be done by July of next year. So going back to our teacher markup mode, I just want to stress that what we've created here in this first U.S. History Period 1, we've created this version. I was working on it, the English version with the guided essay, and we've assigned the sample essays, and now this is in draft. Now, if I wanted to go back and edit the teacher markups, I would go into this cog right here and go edit teacher markup, click on it. Now I'm on that page with all my markups. Let's just say I want to start over. I delete all of my markups. I can do that, and I can now give them particular instructions, etc. If I go back to that assignment, which I will, and I want to actually make this a live assignment, I would go to the same wheel or the cog or the gear, and I would go edit assignment, and it would ask me if I want to change things. And be careful, because if you delete things now and kids have marked them, they will actually be taken away and you can't get those back. But right now I'm only interested in saving and assigning it, so I'm going to save it and assign it. I'm not going to add markups this time. I'll go not now. And this throws me right back into my assignment, but now it's assigned and it's live for the students. Okay, so you have an unbelievable amount of power in terms of what parts of the DBQ you pick, what differentiated versions you pick, whether you want to start with just one document or 2 documents, an EV, a CV. So there's a lot to get used to here. And I think for for a second here, maybe we take a little break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how you can look at student work. So I'm going to pause this for 1 second. Welcome back. What I want to do now for the next couple minutes is show you some of the tools that allow you to look at student assignment and student work, and to give some quality feedback, which is always an important thing, especially in remote learning, but always. What we've built into the system recently, if you look at this left-hand side below your classes, are custom comments. And if you click on this unit feedback, this tells you, this is basically preloaded comments that go onto every page but the essay page. So imagine the documents or background essay, and you can create your own comments or use we preload this with five to 8 of these, but you can remove them. But if you want to create your own comments, you can do that, and you can have them at the ready just to pop on different pages. So I'm going to add that comment. It'll show up at the bottom here. You can change the color that it appears in when it shows up when it gets into the student's account. You have to edit that comment. You go like that. Now it's purple. Then you'll see how that works. It's the same thing with essay feedback. If you have a rubric that you use, you can kind of preload all of the comments you might use. You can delete ours, of course, if you want. Now, what that looks like from a student's perspective, or when you're looking at student work, we're going to go into our period 1. If I want to go see what a student is working on, I could go to the Manage button. This is where you're going to live, the Manage button for giving feedback. And remember, we only have one student in here, my student 165, right, that I demonstrated. And if I go to View Unit or View Essay, I will see that particular page work. So if I go to View Unit, this is the student's work right now, which of course is nothing. They haven't done anything yet. And what I want to show you are the custom comments. If you go to this drop-down menu, here are your comments here, and I can pop this right here. Excellent source analysis, although that's really not a proper comment for this page because there's no source on it really, except the visual, which isn't source. Or I could do something which, if you want to just give a quick feedback, which is a lot of teachers like this in remote learning, they just pop a sticker, which we just put in here, and that might be more appropriate for elementary or younger kids. But I taught high school for 20 years, and weirdly, kids like stickers, but it's kind of fun. So you can pop those up if you want to, but you can also give your own personal comment, which is not preloaded, and type anything you want here to your student. Make it bigger. You can change the size of this. You can make this a different color, etc. So keep in mind these comments are there. They're there to make it easy. And if you had all of your students listed, you have a little floating box here that you can move around. And for this student, I would just click, okay, I gave them comments for this page. And then we go to the next student, and you go to the exact same page of the next student. Got all your kids in here. So you can very quickly look at how do students handle the background essay or a document A and go all the way through. That's a very powerful part of this tool. They can move through it. Now, when you get to, if I'm a student, I'm just going to show you how this looks here. I'm going to refresh my browser. Let's see here. Refresh my browser. Now, as you know, these are the assignments now that I actually have been assigned. So I'm actually looking at this. So let's go take a peek at the Harriet Tubman one and see if something came up. Well, amazingly, there is the feedback, and that's what I just gave. And what we can also demonstrate here is how students, when they get to, say, a document like this, let's just say there was a sticky note from a teacher that says, play the audio. What they would be doing here is they would go up to the audio support feature, and I'm going to play this for a minute just so you can get a sense of it, because these audio files are very powerful. I'm going to play the note and maybe about one paragraph of this Harriet Tubman version just so you can listen to it. Here we go.
No. About 1 year into the Civil War, Harriet Tubman was asked by the governor of Massachusetts to join Union troops in South Carolina. There she headed up a team of 8 black spies to operate behind the lines and provide intelligence for a Union raid to free slaves. The raid was conducted on June 2nd, 1863. It involved 3 gunboats and black troops led by a white officer, Colonel James Montgomery.
When we went up the river in the morning, it was just about light. The fog was rising over the rice fields and the people was just done their breakfast and was going out to the field. I was in the forward boat. The colonel blowed the whistle and stopped the boat, and a couple of soldiers went ashore. About a quarter of an hour after, you could look over the rice fields and see them slaves coming to the boat from every direction. I never see such a sight. Some had bags on their back with pigs in them. Some had chickens tied by the legs, and so child squalling, chickens squawking, and pigs squealing. They all came running to the gunboats.
So we are really proud of our readers. They did a fantastic job of bringing these alive. These are not just for students who are struggling to read. They help all students contextualize and bring to bear sort of the gravitas of the moment in many of these cases. So please use the audio as much as you can, especially during remote learning. I want to show you one thing. Remember, now I'm in the students page here. And if you go to, I want to show you a little bit about the bucketing page, the guided essay, and the student essay. And then I'm going to show you how this works actually in the elementary cues too. So if you go to the bucketing page here, and this actual bucketing page is asking you to, as a student, to say what was Harriet Tubman's greatest achievement. And what I would be doing with my students here is, I'm in teacher markup mode, I think. Let's see here. I know where I am. So let's go here. So give me 1 second here. So just to reiterate, I want to show you what the bucketing allows you to do and moving towards the chicken foot, etc. But what you could do here is ask students to think about what was Harriet Tubman's greatest achievement. They've reviewed all of the documents, they've listened to all the audio, they've made all their markups, and they might organize the essay sort of in two ways. One is maybe 3 great achievements, but not the greatest, because there's 4 actually presented here. And then maybe their next body paragraph might be, but the most impressive achievement. And they're basically making an argument why maybe the Underground Railroad is even more impressive than what Tubman did during the Civil War, which is freeing maybe 800 soldiers on one day as a spy, or former slaves as a former enslaved people as a spy. And she did this in one day, which is rather remarkable, with the help of the Union Army. Or you might organize your paper around achievement 1, achievement 2, etc., achievement 3, and the 4th achievement might be considered the greatest. It just really depends. So in the chicken foot or the thesis development might go multiple ways like this. Again, this is just an example of what kids are putting together. And we do have a left-hand side. As I mentioned, the kids do not have access to this, which looks something like this with buckets involved and possible things. But these are not mandatory to write and create these particular order or these particular buckets. This is just one possible suggestion. So if you're a student and you move to the next page, once you've kind of developed your attack plan, we now remember assigned the guided essay, and I want to show you a little bit about this. Here is where we have the kids get into the writing structures if you want to take it all the way to the essay. So you might ask for a grabber or hook sentence, which is not required, but you can ask for it. I'm just typing in gibberish. We like to have a background in this particular guided essay. It says on Harriet Tubman, and you get that from the background essay. They might go back and look at their notes there and do it. They restate the question to which is the greatest of all achievements of Harriet Tubman. That means what took the most courage, etc. And then we give them a little thesis stem here, a writing stem, which you can copy into this box. You can delete the ellipses and put in, so maybe Underground Railroad, maybe Civil War spy, maybe a nurse, but ultimately her greatest achievement was her 40 years as a caregiver after the war, where she got no recognition but worked tirelessly for people who were suffering in her community. Now, once you do that, you have a little introduction built, and in the guided essay, you can click Build Paragraph, and it throws it into here. And you can do the same for your body paragraph 1. You can copy these in, you can edit those, you can type in your own thing, you can have an argument here, you can build a paragraph. Body paragraph 2 is the same thing. You can type it up, etc. I'm just going to do this very quickly. And there's an argument here. No, it says no argument because we're going to really slam it home in the last. And the main argument, which you might get into right here, copy it in, second, third, da-da-da-da. And the final analysis, this is why this is the greatest argument, and you build your paragraph. I did all that because I want to show you, once you have all your blue boxes loaded up with your tentative paragraphs written out, that you've kind of built from sentence structures, you can go build essay, and it clicks it into the actual essay box writing. And this is, of course, gibberish because that's what I did very quickly. But the students then can massage their essay, create more transitions, and really get it, even go back and look at more evidence. But they're building the essay in a very structured way. Again, this is a very supportive way to help students. Not all students need this. Now, once they're done and feel like they're ready for this draft to be sent to the teacher, this is where they send the draft to the teacher, and they send it along. And then the teacher, they cannot then send another version, but they now that's version 1 that they sent, but they have a live current version they can keep working on. And as a teacher, what you're looking for, and I will show you a different class because I have some things loaded up into it. Well, let me see if I can find a demo class here that I've been using. If you go to manage, what will happen is you will then have your manage button will turn orange because a student has sent you an essay. You can click on that, and you can see all of these students have actually sent me essays. And I could go look at this, and I could see what their essays are. I don't think these are real essays that have been turned in, so I'm a little nervous to click it, but I'm going to click on it. I'm going to see work that was done, and you would see a student's essay here. You could give comments, and they would show up on the right-hand column, and you could send this back to the students. Now, there's a lot I could show you along the lines of teacher feedback. I think that might be a separate screencast. For me, the key to this screencast and for you getting yourself oriented on this webinar is that you know how to log into DBQ Online. You know that that's through Clever, that once you get there, you are going to have an option of looking at all of these things, but maybe start with the PD videos to get a refresher. You can then review the particular library binders that you have and the text that you want to use. And also that you know how to create a class code, get your kids connected, and then begin building powerful, differentiated assignments for students. Now, just as a word to you about teaching, when you are actually teaching with students either on Zoom or live classroom, you are going to go into the assignment that you assigned and go to view, and that's your teacher mode, okay? And you can do anything that the students can do with all of this to kind of demonstrate how to make it look. You can model for them like crazy, either live or even if you're in the teacher markup mode, which is where you get there where you go save and assign and add teacher markups. That will actually stick. But when you're in view mode, this will not stick unless you kind of open up the same assignment. You can erase it anytime you want, but it's not in the kids' account. Okay, only the markups that you make in the teacher markup mode stay with the students. Okay, and finally, I think what I want to encourage you to do is to look at these various structures, see which fits your students the most. And then maybe start small with them this year and build them up into multi-document attacks. So let me show you one thing as a parting note on the micro cues here. And I'm going to do that by looking at an elementary cue. The elementary cues, as I already suggest, are in lavender. And I'm going to go into say maybe why should we protect the wolf, okay? And I'm going to preview that so you guys can get a sense of how structured these are. So in this particular assignment, same tool, same everything, but this is a micro cue and we have one document, right? And in the micro cues, in the elementary cues, if you click along, the hook exercises are often visual like this. And if you click on, I didn't even mention this, but if you click on any visual, they pop up and that happens. But this is just an analysis of not a political cartoon, but a cartoon that makes a significant point about protecting animals. And there's discussion questions which kids could work through or put their little text boxes like this underneath and they could type their answers and you can coach them to do that. You can model that. And then after the hook exercise in the elementary cues, we have a shortened background essay. This is about half a page. And in the micro cue, we have a gist statement. So their job here, other than to read it and to discuss it and to understand it, is to actually go into these features here and to create a gist statement, which is a summary statement, of course, of the main idea. I didn't mention this before, but there's some serious vocabulary support in all of this. In the background essays where we have a term that we know they need to know that's often key to the whole exercise, plus it's difficult, we predefine it. But any word here, as you might know, if you highlight it, this happens in almost any browser-based tool, and right-click it, you can get a definition. So that's a very supportive tool for students, and you need to maybe coach them to see that if they don't know how to do that already, okay? Now in the micro-Q here, you have this gist statement built out, so that's often going to turn into a 1 or 2 line statement. You then move them to understanding the question, so they're kind of going through and bucketing, but there's only one bucket here, right? And then most importantly, there's one document here, they can fill all this out, they can pop it up and get a really good look. It's an infographic here. And you can go all the way through and answer their questions. And then when you get to the writing, you have one bucket where they take out a couple of pieces of evidence from that graphic and make a little argument around it. So again, the question is, why should we protect the wolf? And we start their argumentative sentence right there. And then finally, when they get to their actual essay page, and you can actually make this more supportive by assigning a guided essay, we tell them exactly what we're looking for in each part of their little paragraph here. And again, if they have most of this is already built, the background's from the background essay, which is the gist statement, the thesis and claim we talked about already. In the pre-bucketing page, they did evidence 1, evidence 2, an argument in that big bucket, and here they're just putting their clincher in. So we're building this paragraph as we go. So I really want to encourage the elementary school teachers who are watching this to take a hard look at a lot of the supports that are in the micro-Q, and also thinking about assigning the guided essay with the micro-Q, which is even a more supportive tool, does all of this here, but with sentence starters. So ton of support in here. I'll leave you with some encouragement. If you can get your kids connected and into the system, that's a major win. If you can get them into the system and playing around with the annotation tools in the first couple of weeks of using this, that's a major win. And then ultimately, you want to build them towards a point where they can make their claims and elicit their evidence and make their arguments and reason in one paragraph, and then build them up to multi-paragraphs. Now, of course, if you're teaching a high school class that's moving along, you can start them with a full Q. Again, though, I would always assign things in customized version in the remote learning world, because I think you just don't know how much time you're going to have and how long things are going to take. And you can always edit the assignment and add in more pages if you want to. Okay, again, my name is Chip Brady, and I am one of the co-founders of the DBQ project. You can email me directly at chip@dbqproject.com with any questions. You can also email anybody on our support team. They will get this immediately at support@dbqproject.com to ask any questions about the tech side of things. Okay, well, look forward to hearing from some of you. Good luck this year setting up your accounts and getting going with your kids, and have a great day.
I want to thank Chip for that wonderful presentation. Again, please contact him if you need any support. Also, you can contact me. Here are some curriculum resources that are available to you that give links to our partner organizations, as well as information on how to access DBQ. Also suggested reading, Dr. Kindy's books of Stamped from the Beginning and How to Be an Anti-Racist. And also, if you are completing this for credit, we ask that you fill out the exit ticket, which will be linked in the slides. So I want to thank you. My name here, Angela Headley Mitchell, and again, my contact information and how you can access our place-based learning, our instructional pacing, and history and social studies website. And I thank you for being with us. Take care.